Welcome to Rewild by Design, a podcast for women in midlife who are ready to burn the rule book, drop the good girl mask, and come home to who they really are. I'm your host, Marissa, a human design and Gene Keys mentor, and your guide in this wild woman era. Get ready for bold conversations, raw truths, and the kind of insights that'll shake you awake. Because midlife isn't the end of your story. It's the point where you finally get to write it your way. Welcome back to Rewild by Design in episode 11. Can you believe it? I can't believe it. But today I want to talk about, it's really at the core of what I do, and almost every single woman that I've worked with, and maybe a lot of the women that I've known in my life, carries this same thing, and that's the good girl mask. That polished version of yourself who makes sure that everyone else is happy. The one who knows the rules, follows them, and keeps the peace, even when something inside her is screaming for something different. And for a long time, that version of me ran the show in my own life. Like I've said in previous episodes, my life looked good on paper. I had the career, the family, the house, all the checked boxes. But underneath the fine in my life, I was deeply restless and frustrated and feeling guilty for wanting more out of my life because I did have it so good. And that was that conditioning to stay in that good girl mask that kept me in the same patterns. And what I want to share today is all about how we can slowly rip off that mask. And first off, why do we even put it on in the first place? What it costs us to be the good girl, and then how to finally start living without it. Now, the good girl mask gets built from when we're really young, right? From 0 to 7. That's our formative years. We're like a sponge. And I'm not saying this is everybody, but for a lot of women, when we're little girls, we're taught to be good. Don't be too loud. Don't take up too much space. Be polite. Be helpful. Be pretty, but, don't show off. And work hard, but don't outshine other people. And we absorb all of these messages, whether or not we're told them directly or we're just in the vicinity of other people talking about these things. So it could be coming from our parents, our families of origin, or teachers, and everyone saying, "Oh, what a good girl." And like I said, some of it can be more indirectly. Like just seeing who else in your classroom got praised or who got punished. And as we continue to grow, that mask becomes part of our identity. We wear it to stay safe. We wear it to get love and to feel like we belong. It's a survival strategy. But that comes at a cost because every time we choose the mask over our authentic self, we chip away at our own internal sense of self. We learn to abandon what we feel, what we want, what we know, in exchange for approval. And human design helps us dig into why some of us might carry this even heavier, right? An open solar plexus might learn to avoid conflict at all costs, saying yes just to keep the peace. An open heart or will center might constantly feel the need to prove their worth. And even the defined centers can carry conditioning too. It comes from our family, our schools, our culture that reinforces be the good girl or else.
And the mask slowly becomes armor, but it's the armor that also slowly suffocates us. The real cost to all of this is in our energy, our relationships, maybe our careers or businesses, and even our identity. So, from an energy perspective, living as the good girl drains your life force. It's exhausting to keep up appearances while silently betraying your own needs, your relationships. You might think that the mask keeps everything even and smooth, but what it really does is build up resentment because you're saying yes when you mean no. And at some point, that doesn't work anymore. And from a career perspective, you might follow the safe, expected path instead of the one that actually excites you. So you end up hitting milestones and still don't feel like that's enough. In identity, this is the biggest cost because you end up forgetting who you are outside of the mask because you've played that role for so long that when someone asks you what you really want, you don't know how to answer. And I specifically talk about this because this is what I lived. As I've mentioned earlier and in previous episodes, on the outside, everything, I looked like I had it all together. But in the inside, I woke up every day with this pit in my stomach and this like underlying undercurrent of anxiety. Like, is this really it? And that was a wake up call. And when the mask feels heavier than the life it's supposed to protect, that's when your soul knocks a little bit louder to get your attention. And from a perspective of human design, this can, in the lens, again, take it all with a grain of salt. Use your own authority to decide if this is something that will work for you or not. But human design can give us the language for why this good girl mask feels so suffocating. When we look at type and strategy, projectors often play the good girl by overworking in trying to prove that they can keep up, constantly seeking that recognition. Generators, you may stay stuck in work or relationships that you've outgrown because you've been conditioned not to quit and not to be selfish. And manifesting generators, you often try to fit in a linear path instead of honoring your multi passionate, multi creative nature. Manifestors, you learn to suppress your creative urges. You learn to ask permission instead of initiating. And reflectors can get lost in the environments that only reward compliance and masking your true potential for the whole of humanity. And it's not just types. We can look through the centers. And conditioning often creeps up more often when they're open or undefined, but like I mentioned, it can happen in the defined centers too. So from the head center, this is inspiration, right? Feeling pressured to have answers or to take on other people's questions as your own. And the ajna, this is for conceptualizing. An open ajna or an undefined ajna can get conditioned into locking yourself into these rigid opinions and beliefs to seem correct, to seem right or acceptable. And the throat center is all about communication. And obviously, I'm having a hard time with my throat center right now. Speaking to please instead of saying what you really think. And with the G or the identity center, This is all about love and direction. So, shaping yourself to fit into whatever box will get you that love and approval. And then we have the heart or the will center or the self center. This is where you might hustle to prove your worth and overpromise or competing for recognition. And then we have the sacral. When it's open, could be saying yes when your body is screaming no and ignoring your natural flow and your natural rhythms and holding on, trying to keep up, right, with everybody else. And then we have the open solar plexus. This is avoiding conflict at all costs, even keeping the peace when it silences you. The open or undefined spleen holds on to what's familiar. So, whether that be jobs, relationships, habits, even if they're unhealthy, just to feel safe. And then we have the open or undefined root center, takes on pressure to always keep up, rushing around to meet other people's timelines instead of your own. Now, each open center is like a doorway where that good girl mask can slide right in. Like I said, but even the defined centers can carry conditioning too. For example, someone with a defined solar plexus might inadvertently push their emotions onto others, believing that they're supposed to control the mood. And then we have the profile lines. Which flavor, how we're here to play out our roles. The line 1 tries to get it right so no one can criticize you. The line 2 hides your gifts to avoid standing out, even when other people see them clear as day. And the line 3 often wears the mask of, I've got my shit together, instead of just owning that messy middle trial and error path. And the line 4 often stays in relationships out of obligation, even when they completely drain you. And the line 5 ends up carrying projections from other people of being the savior, taking on responsibilities that you never even asked for. And then we have line 6, feeling pressure to embody perfection or feeling the pressure to get it all right now, when your real power comes from living your phases, all 3 of them, openly and honestly. So, when you see how both your centers and your profile shape the way that you've specifically been conditioned, and we're not judging this here, right? We're acknowledging it, we're witnessing it. Even we can thank it for what it did to keep you safe up until this point. But all of these patterns that you've lived out start to make sense. And you can start breaking through those patterns and coming back to who you really are underneath all of that conditioning. So you might be like thinking, okay, this is all well and good to have all this information, Marissa, but what do I actually do to drop the good girl mask, to shed it? And I'm not going to sugarcoat this. This is a process. It's not a one and done dramatic moment. It's a series of small choices over and over again because you're rewiring those patterns. So it could be saying no when your body says no. N-O, period. Or leaving space before you answer so you can feel into your body for what feels correct instead of just answering right away because you feel that pressure. Or just letting someone else be disappointed instead of betraying yourself. You are not responsible for how they feel. Or choosing the option that excites you, even if it doesn't make sense to anybody else. And lastly, especially for my open sacral people, resting without guilt. Rest is not earned. It is part of the process. Everyone deserves rest. And I'm not going to say doing this work is going to be hunky-dory. It's going to be raw. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to feel good. And our ego, our subconscious, is not going to like that because it only knows what's familiar. And you may end up disappointing people. And some relationships might shift around. And that's okay. I want to give you permission that it doesn't have to look like everybody else anymore. This is the process of rewilding your life by choosing yourself, even when it feels risky and scary and uncomfortable. Because over and over, those choices add up. The mask starts to loosen up. It softens. You might be able to breathe easier. And you can start to remember what it feels like to live from your own energy instead of just performing for approval. And again, it's this not one and done event. You're going to come across obstacles. You're going to see some patterns. And this is part of the process of coming back to yourself to then prove only to yourself that you're here for a deeper reason. You're not here to be like everybody else. Your soul chose this blueprint, these situations, these challenges, these lessons, these activations to help you grow. And rewilding is all about embracing all of it. The shitstorm and the beautiful, joyful moments too. And human design and even the gene keys can help you put the language to what you've been feeling and give you a map back to yourself. And even though that good girl mask might have kept you safe once, it doesn't have to be like that. We can choose ourselves and stop abandoning who we really are. And if you're ready to start shedding that good girl mask, I'll link a few things in the show notes. If you're brand new to human design, I suggest starting with your chart. You can grab it free on my website, as well as the free energy snapshot audio. It's a short breakdown of how your type operates and how you naturally are designed to move. Like I said, that's probably the first step. If you're new or just learning about human design and yourself, start there. If you want to go deeper and you want to know all about your energy map, I highly suggest my Decode Your Design digital reading, which is over 60 pages, all in depth about who you are on an energetic level, and helps you make sense of all the different parts of the chart. And for the woman who knows she's ready to step back into her own power, stop abandoning herself, and start living the dreams that she's had on the back burner, the Frequency Mastermind is where we do this work live. So going into your chart, your conditioning, and the patterns that you've been living out with real-time support, community, and integration. And if that mask feels too heavy to keep carrying alone, the Frequency Mastermind is where you get to set that down. And again, I'll link everything in the show notes. And Thank you for listening all along. If you made it to the end, I appreciate you. I trust you got what you needed from this particular episode today. And if you enjoyed the show, one last ask. Could you take a moment to leave a review wherever you catch your podcasts? It makes a difference and helps more women like you start to rewild their lives with human design in the Gene Keys.
Well, that's it